Hello and welcome to another episode of That 60s Recording Podcast, the podcast that has conversations inspired by the golden era of recording. Okay, 2022. I hope you all had a good break and are now ready to get back to it. I know you're probably not, but that's just the way that it is. Yes, this is the second round of this intro I recorded because I said I hope you're all raring to go for another year at 2022, and then I thought, well, 2020 and 2021, I mean, they've been pretty okay years, but yeah, obviously there's some major things that have happened that have not been great. So yes, the less said about all of this, the better. Let's just concentrate on making good recordings and making music and focusing on that kind of stuff, shall we? Okay, so this episode I'm speaking with a chap called John Raham, who is a Canadian producer and drummer. And I first came across his work before I even knew who he was, essentially. So I got a copy of an album by a band called the Be Good Tanyas, and it's kind of Americana, bluesy sort of stuff, and I was really into it. Little did I know that John Raham was who was playing drums on it, but I loved the drum sound. It was so thick and just quite basic, if I'm honest with you. And it was one of the first times I'd heard such understated drumming, and it really stood out as that's what I want my playing to sound like. Then I followed the Be Good Tanya's career for a while, and Frazee Ford is the sort of the lead singer, if you like, and she went off to have a solo career, which John Raham produced and played drums on. So again, just became even more in love with the sound that he created, and it became quite obvious to me that the sort of approach that he had to everything, sonically and in terms of attitude towards recording, was something I was aspiring to in what I was doing. So then I came across a website for a recording studio in Canada called Afterlife Studios. I do go down a lot of rabbit holes on the internet. And this studio was sort of born in 1966 and was formerly called Mushroom Studios. And lots of well-known artists recording there, including Diana Ross and the Supremes. Rumour has it that Led Zeppelin did a bit of recording there at one point too. So it was a proper 60s studio, so it kind of got me thinking. I was like, okay, cool. And on the website, it doesn't say John Raham anywhere. So I was kind of curious as to this studio and wanted to speak to the owner about its history. Little did I realise that the owner was John Raham, who was on all these records that I absolutely loved. So that made it clear to me that I had to speak with him. So this conversation is all about the studio, and if I were you, I'd go to Afterlife Studios' website and check out some of the gear he's got because it's relevant to the conversation. He talks about his approach to hybrid recording, not just hybrid mixing, hybrid recording, which is incredibly interesting, and also his approach to drum sounds and loads of stuff. We cover a lot of stuff here, so I'm very excited to share this with you, and it's a really inspiring conversation. I have, I've my head has been buzzing since we finished it. So here we go, John Raham. A Be Good Tanya's record as the thank you present.
Oh wow, was it Blue Horse or something?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with it. And then when I found Frazee Ford was doing solo stuff, I mean, it's just incredible. So it's kind of felt like it feels kind of nice speaking to you.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, that was, it's been quite a long evolution since then, for sure, for all of them, but Frazee especially, because she kind of sort of branched from that trad folk thing into the more like the spirit animal that she really is now with the current records.
And I also noticed, I didn't know this at the time, but a lot of that music's released on Network, and the band I kind of had my success with was very nearly signed to Network, which was kind of nice. So again, it was another little like, oh right, you guys, that all those records are on Network.
So I was rattling on before I realized that I'd got cut off. But what project was that you were almost on Network with?
So we were called Dancing Years, and it was kind of sort of folky pop, I suppose, but it was more cinematic. And we did a lot of touring with Boy and Bear, the Australian band.
Oh yeah.
And that's how the link up came.
Right.
So then it's the the usual story that the A&R who was working with Boy and Bear in the UK wanted to sign us, and then he had a falling out with the label, and
I see.
I have the deal on my laptop, and it was we were that close, and then you know what it's like, and then suddenly that was the sort of straw that broke the camel's back, and everything imploded.
So when was that? Like,
talking sort of 2014. So
right, okay,
a fairly long time ago. But it was frustrating because it was I joined as a separate musician, so those guys all went to school together and sort of grew up together, and then I came to the city where I live from somewhere else and was sort of working as a professional musician and came into the band separately.
I see.
So I'd kind of set my life up to accommodate pitfalls like that, and none of them had. So it was pretty excruciating, to be honest. And we were busy working on an album, and we thought it was enough money to live off for about a year and have some healthy tour support, and we kind of thought this is going to set us up for a little while. It felt like a really good home for us, and we thought this will be it. But when it fell through, I think everybody went, this is too much, I can't do this anymore. That sort of, you know what it's like. It's a very, very common story.
I do, man. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, like that transition from doing this because I love it to, okay, this is my career, is a, tenuous transition for a lot of people. Like that line is tough to cross.
Absolutely,
for bands. Yeah. So
completely, especially when they're, was never the intention to become a sort of an artist, if you like. They just sort of happened upon it.
Yeah.
And it makes it
kind of, most of my favorite bands start that way. Just happened upon something cool, and they've known each other for a long time, and the chemistry's good. But then, so many things have to go right. And
exactly.
So much of it is out of the control of the artist.
Precisely.
And we're not rewarded for making the best art. We're rewarded for all kinds of other things.
Absolutely. Canada's got a lot happening at the moment. Well, not even at the moment, but I guess through when I was working with Dancing Ears, we listened a lot to Broken Social Scene, Feist, Bahamas, Dan Mangan, just absolutely tons of, Andy Schauf. There seems to be this proper rich seam of artists coming out of Canada at the minute. I don't know what do you think think's happening?
Well, I think that exposure is sort of easier now because it's less reliant on travel and all that stuff. So it's maybe more of a level playing field. Like in Canada, the hard thing is the next major city where you can try to draw for a larger crowd is 1,000 miles away. But now that sort of the technology brings us all closer, it doesn't really matter where the artist's based or is from. Canada has very supportive arts funding situation. Some people say it's kind of cliquey and some nepotism and stuff going on, but besides any of that, we're all just very fortunate that there's anything at the federal level in the way of support for artists. So I think that's a big factor. They let some great, talented, creative people have the budget to make something that can compete on the world stage, and then you get to see it actually happen. And a lot of the artists that you mentioned are sort of in that, like, hey, this is actually cool stuff. We're not creating Disney pop stars so much, although we have a fair share of those too, I guess. But I feel like the funding actually works in cases like the ones that you mentioned, where then they get critical mass, and then there they go, and they can go play festivals around the world once that's enough. a viable thing again.
Yeah.
And they, it really has helped launch careers of people that might otherwise not have gotten the opportunity or the second look from the bigger players that are getting behind them. So I don't want to, say it's all because of the money that got spent, but it doesn't hurt. And, maybe the lifestyle or the climate or whatever, there's a lot of songwriting going on these days because, not much else to do. And, and even in a non-COVID time, there's a lot of inside time in Canada where you're kind of holed up. So I think it is a good spawning ground for artists and writers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the execution side that's tough, like touring, like I mentioned. It's really hard here because of the vast distances between major population centers.
Yeah, the complete opposite of the UK.
Yeah, that's why we always loved coming to the UK. It's like, wait, we get a 1 hour drive today instead of a 14-hour drive and a border to cross, and you gotta get strip searched and everything. It's just like the UK and Europe just seemed like just so easy to tour because of the proximity and the that there's no real borders.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe more so now with Brexit going on, they probably want to make sure all your merch is legit and everything. So
yeah, it's really difficult now. I almost, in fact, I didn't end up going in the end. Somebody else covered for me, but had a show yesterday, on Monday even, in Germany that went ahead, and just for one show in Germany, the amount of bureaucracy that had to go on, outside of COVID regulations, just even, and you're right, it's all about merch counting, visas, and especially lower level touring through Europe is going to be very difficult. Yeah. So interested.
The red tape is a killer for sure.
That's it. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, I think the Musicians Union is lobbying for some kind of Europe-wide visa card so that you can,
that'd be smart.
If once you've kind of got your main visa, you can travel the whole of the sort of main Europe continent. But it's the low-level touring that's going to suffer. It's the people who are relying on merch sales and the fees of the shows in order to fund the next record. It's going to be very hard. Yeah,
absolutely.
I wonder if you could sort of just give me a bit of a rundown of your history. And I know you're a producer and a drummer and numerous other things. But what's your sort of musical history and how did you sort of come to the point where you're currently at?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how far back we really want to go, but I guess, always drawn to music, had a musical mom's side of the family, not so much dad's side.
Yeah.
And my brother and I would play in bands growing up. I took to the drums and immediately after high school moved to the big city to become a huge rock star. And that took a little longer than I was prepared for. So I went to music school, studied jazz drums here and in Toronto, and then always loved being in the studio and playing. And then I guess once digital audio became a viable reality, then I was able to sort of do things that you wouldn't be able to do unless you had massive capital to have a giant mixing console and stuff. So I basically started doing little mixes and remixes for a friend who had a recording studio in Vancouver. And this is like the days of ADAT. So I was like transferring ADATs to the computer one tape at a time and syncing them up and then making pretty questionable remixes of some of these songs. Just kind of learning my chops on the in the digital realm, like, previous to that, our band won some contests here and there. And one of them, the prize was a few days in the only studio in the small town that we lived in. And I fell in love there too, and just started hanging out. And pretty soon it got to the point where Cam, the owner, would let me come in at night with the band and work on stuff. So I knew my way around enough to get myself into some trouble on the analog side of things. And then, like I said, I didn't have, the finances to build anything like that in Vancouver. So, but yeah, once computers came out, I had to figure out how to do this in the box. And then since then, it's been working myself backwards out of the box back into the analog world, where I guess I could turn my phone, but I'm sitting at my old Studer console.
Absolutely.
And the 2-inch machine out back. And so, yeah, I've kind of gone back in time to a point where it's now like a pretty solid hybrid situation with the old tech and the new. But yeah, so along the way, sort of played a lot of drums on the other side of the glass, but always coming into the control room and bugging the engineers and poking around and asking what, like a lot of people do to me now. And I can tell, some of them are like, boy, was I this annoying when I was doing that to the engineer? Or some of them are like, oh, this is great. I like working with this person and answering their questions and stuff like that. So, just always curious about that side of it. And then they sort of just kept going hand in hand, like playing in more projects, touring more, and recording more, to the point where I decided to build my own spot here in Vancouver in a beat up old warehouse downtown. And slowly taking over more rooms of the warehouse for more ISO booths and a piano room and a like reverb chamber type of situation. And just pretty much by the end, it was like one half of this big dilapidated warehouse, which was a great place to learn my chops, be able to offer Vancouver bands a affordable place to come and make cool records.
Yeah.
So that worked nicely. All the while touring more and more and more. Some of that with the Tanyas and then crazy solo stuff too. Got to see the world and keep the recording stuff going at the same time. Then my partner got really sick, diagnosed with breast cancer. And I thought, hey, you know what? This is not a good time to be touring. So I handed the reins of most of the things I was drumming in to a great drummer here, Leon Power, who's now still Frazie's drummer. He's great. He's my hero. And focused full time on the studio side of things so I could be in town, and just I thought I'd miss the rush of the stage and all that kind of stuff, but I really haven't, I really have not. Like, if I had never done it, maybe, yeah, I'd feel like I missed something, but, having toured a ton and seen everywhere, I was playing in bands where it's not about the chops of the drummer, and I'm not, signing people's chests after the show and stuff. It's like, it's very, a special moment when someone would discreetly come up after the show and say, hey, I know how hard it is to just be super supportive and discreet and do your role without getting in the way while the attention is focused on the singer and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and that's like a role-playing drummer, not a, I'm, despite my greatest efforts and practice and school and study, I just never really was destined for drum virtuosity, more just like, and that's kind of the music I listen to too, like listen to Neil Young, and you just throw down a groove that feels good, and you get so much deeper into people's bodies while they absorb this music that they're now listening to, that they can take in, like you've brought them in, and now they can listen to that person's voice, or fall in love with the words or whatever, right? But if you, in music like that, if you are trying to get your licks in, then you're taken away from the greater picture of the puzzle that's going on here.
100%. Your story sounds like a very similar story to mine, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So I studied jazz and did, mentioned dancing years already, and it's a very similar background sort of role, supportive role.
No way.
And I'm, there's so much to unpack in what you've just said. And I think something that used to get said to me by those people you mentioned in those moments was about intention. And that's certainly something that I get in your playing, is every note feels like it has a weight of intention behind it and is adding something. It's adding, every kick, every snare, everything you choose to do has that weight behind it, and it's and a bit of gravitas around it, in the sense that it's contributing to the music in a way that it's not flippant. You're not just throwing away a couple of snare hits here and there, or it's like, well, that was intended to be there, and it's there for a purpose. And then you can hear that through all of the records that I've listened, that you've played on. And I think that it's that simplicity and intention behind what you do that sort of works really well.
Cool. Well, appreciate that. Glad to hear that it comes across that way, because it's by choice to be pretty economical with the grooves, just like, hey, what's important here? And I also have to say that most records that people comment on, wow, I really love the grooves on those records that you played on. If you look on the credits, there's a guy named Darren Paris playing the bass.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, I think that if that was somebody else, that people wouldn't say that. I really feel like he is the reason why I get a lot of compliments.
Okay.
Not just so much with the end product, but even like finessing the parts together, like we do all with playing live. And we will work out parts and kind of who's going to go where. And then, okay, we've kind of over mapped it, over calculated. Let's sort of just know that the verse is based around and we're allowed a little freedom within that, and then we'll just have a nice rapport where he fills a spot, I throw a kick in that he doesn't match, and it's kind of works. And we kind of have similar ideas about how busy or not things will be to make the groove work. So I gotta give a lot of credit for things that feel good to Darren, because he's amazing.
So how, in those kind of situations, there's certainly a balance to be had between sort of analyzing what you're going to play, or like pre-preparing or rehearsing or whatever, and also leaving enough room for interpretation, but making sure that there's enough thought that it's the correct amount, and it's, you're not leaving it. I guess to an artist that's not used to working in that way, it could be misconstrued as being lazy, but it's not. It's leaving stuff to chance, because they're the happy accidents. But how do you, if you're even aware of it, how do you balance that kind of feeling, maybe with an artist present, or when you're doing a session and you've been, someone's presents you with a song that you're going to play on, how do you take it from listening to the song the first time to getting a take that you kind of all are happy with? Because sometimes I guess that can happen in half an hour sometimes.
That's a really cool question. I never really think about like verbalizing that transition from listening to the demo. We're all up here in the control room, and they've got their iPhone out and they're playing us the song. We're scribbling out little form chart. And you know, in those cases, again, I feel like it's really cool to be able to, like, as a session drummer guy, I show up sometimes in those situations with a bass player and a rhythm guitar player that I don't know. And we have to build that rapport and talk very nice and Canadianly about how we're going to do this or that. And then there's situations like with an artist that you know, or a rhythm section that you've worked with a bunch, where a lot of that you get to skip past and just like get down to like, okay, I'm feeling this, and oh, hey, what if we do that push into bar 3 and not into bar 4? And then, like I said, you start to over math it, and you can tell when you listen back, you're like, oh man, we're listening to ourselves here, not the song again. So we got to backtrack and be like, okay, our first instinct was good about the basics of the groove, and then the rest we need to just follow the song shape and allow each other some freedom. And again, like listening to the records that I love, at least, you know, it's all very dependent on genre and the artist and stuff for sure, but in that sort of folk-ish realm where there's grooves going on, which is you know, that's not an official genre, but it's a lot of music, you know, like a lot of people write folk songs on the guitar and want to have drums and bass grooves going on, right? That's like a massive amount of music. So in that world, I feel like you risk making decisions on day one when you're building those bass and drum parts that are going to really determine how calculated and refined the rest of the record goes. So if you map everything out and do all your, you know, every bass note has a kick and all the pushes are the same and everything's going that route, then I feel more likely that down the line you keep going that way and you end up with a pretty preconceived sounding product, you know, like a very sort of produced thing. Whereas if you leave some freedoms at the beginning and some departures from bass and drums, then you get that little bit of swagger and loose feel, where then the next guy that comes in feels like he has an opportunity, or she, to express a bit more, and then therefore inject some personality into the music, and you're not just left with, you know, a very nice proper recording that has everything laid out nicely. That's all fine and well, but if you have some great personalities involved, it's nicer to allow them to speak and create something greater than what you could have done by programming it all or whatever, right? Like that's the whole point of having talented people around you, is to let them do things that you wouldn't have thought of, or that are slightly outside the boundaries of what you are trying to contain or create to make the song work.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of my production is co-production, where I really am working with the artist to make the thing that they think they want to make, but also just helping guide decisions and turn it into something hopefully better than what they thought it was going to be. So all that said has to be balanced against where the artist wants to take it, because they're the ones that has to believe in it and love it and go play it every night and feel good doing that. So I feel like if I just smoked cigars in the back and told everyone what to do, even if it was pretty cool and it wasn't really the artist's in their soul and in their gut, it might not get any legs because they feel like it's not them or something. So I don't think I've ever crossed that line. I'm probably a little too far the other way. I probably maybe should have said, hey, let's do this. But, I don't want to risk that compromising an artist's integrity. But I have, more in answer to your question about that, how do you get from the demo to what's actually going down on tape? So many factors, like the ones I mentioned, but also one thing that I've found more and more, and again, this maybe is because I'm around people that I trust and are talented people, but that first instinct is usually the right thing. So here, when I'm tracking, everything's going to tape, but it's also getting dumped into the computer on the fly. So we'll go down, hack through the arrangement with our original sort of idea about what the feel should be like. And, we're missing the bridge and we're forgetting the double chorus or whatever. And then we kind of learn the arrangement better and refine our parts a bit. And we think, oh, hey, we're getting somewhere. And then, okay, let's go have a listen. And we'll come upstairs. And, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. And we, oh yeah, that's tight going into the bridge. But hey, let's pull up that first one and just see what we were doing. And it's like, oh, there it is. That is so cool. How can we get that back, but also play the arrangement right and troubleshoot some of these sections that didn't work with that original vibe? So, and that's where I feel like, again, the studio hybrid thing kind of is handy, because if we were just on tape, we'd have probably rewound and gone over that, because at $500 a reel, you can't keep everything. No. So dumping it in on the fly is nice and handy for being able to quickly review and decide what's working and what's not. And even from a sonic perspective, sometimes, like a lot of times when I'm playing drums, I'm kind of running up and down the stairs, setting some levels, and then I've got my assistant here driving the ship while I'm down there. Or maybe I've got him down there hitting the drums while I dial and get stuff in, and then I go down and take one happens, and maybe I'm hitting harder and the snare's really splatting, and I'll come up and hear that and dial it back a bit. And then, like I said, we'll play some takes, come listen. And again, that first one, oh, that was actually really cool that the snare was hit so smashed to the tape or whatever. So even some of the gut instincts or happy accidents on an engineering level can be inspiring. So not only are we going to shift our groove back to that original thing, I'm actually going to make it so the snare's hitting the tape too hard again, or whatever. So, and tying this in with the phrasey stuff, the sort of instinctual thing is her newest record, You Can Be the Sun, is largely created from first take improvisations.
Wow.
Largely. Like some of the things, I think the first 30 seconds of the first song on the record are the first time anyone has ever played that ever, not even knowing what it was going to be, other than this is in G. Hey, how about we'll do something in G? Crazies at the piano. And it's just like, whoa, that was really cool. And then we'll come up, they played that for 14 minutes or something until the tape ran out. And I'm like, oh, hey guys, we should stop. And they'd come up and listen and try to build from it. And then again, at the end, it's like, hey, let's go listen to the very first time anyone ever did that. And you can hear it in the right before the count-in. They're like, Darren said, okay, go G and then A or whatever. Right? It's like literally a jam.
That's incredible.
That then, the song got built from the jam, but the original inception of the opening was never achieved again. So we had to go back to those original takes that were not on a click or anything and steal them and slice them and insert them into what was the full structured song version that we had later. So again, there's a lot to be said for the catching the initial thought and feeling and inspiration that's there. I mean, it's a lot. I learned that from Frazee way back, just even recording vocals. It's like, okay, this person is capable of just delivering a devastating vocal the very first time. So don't screw it up, you know, or don't not press record. Like, don't, when she says, oh, let's just run it and I'll get my headphones set up, you don't press play, you press record, because you might get something that you never, I mean, it takes a willingness to dive into lots of takes and do a bit of editing, but yeah, I don't press play anymore. I just press record.
Fantastic. This is incredible. I love it. And I just think it's almost like on a subconscious level at that first take, you're reacting in the moment. You're not.
Absolutely,
your conscious mind is not thinking.
Engaged.
It's it's you're just reactionary, and that's what. Yeah, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And at a like a primal level of drums and bass and voice, that's great. You can't do that with 8 string players in a room. You guys just do something cool together. But
yeah.
They don't know what the viola is going to play, and it's going to sound like crap. And a lot of people don't really understand that either. It's like a lot of string sessions here. I have to check in and be like, so is there arrangements, or is there someone leading, or is this an ensemble that's worked together a bunch and they know it? Oh no, I just hired so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and was hoping that they just come up with some cool chord pads or whatever. It's like, it's not a keyboard player where he knows where each finger is. These are individual minds, and you can't expect them to not just all play the same note or spread it out evenly or whatever, right? So within, each stage of a production requires different things. And I would say that, with the first take kind of primal stuff, like you're saying, where the conscious brain and the left side or the right side, or whichever one that's responsible for thinking in an orderly fashion, is sort of turned off while you're coming up with something.
Yeah.
That's great at that.
How does it work sound-wise for you? I mean, I'm asking this question from a drummer's point of view. I mean, often I have my kit set up, and I don't know, maybe yesterday I did a session and I took all of the padding out of the kick drum, and I sit down for whatever I've got on that next day, and there's a deep, like a low-tuned acrolite that's sort of going, and there's no padding in the bass drum. And I sit down and I start learning this track, and I maybe just keep the acrolite there because it's there, and I tune it up a little bit, and it's maybe got less of a thwack to it. And then, I don't know, maybe the toms had some T-tails on, and I'm kind of learning the song and tweaking without thinking about it too much as it happens. And then that ends up being purely almost by chance. That's the sound for that next song. And it could have been that I had the previous day, it was any song, and it was likely that I'd have just made that, tweaked it without working. But how does that, how would you verbalize how that works for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we're at sort of instinct, and that's part of what makes you a valuable drummer to people. It's like, oh, he's going to come in and just do something that is going to set the tone or whatever for how it's going to work. So everybody's different. It's all personal. Here at the studio, I've got, lots of great vintage kits that I've collected, but I also have lots of drummers coming through, and I have a few precious things that I don't give everyone access to, but for the most part, I let people go at it with tunings and stuffings and dampenings and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes time to make a record that I'm playing drums on again, who knows what kind of shape these kits are in. And I don't have a sort of drum store drum sound where this is how we do it, and the toms are a fourth apart, and it ends up being that way a lot. But It's I guess a lot of it comes from my remembrances of what I think cool drums for a track like this might sound like based on other records that I love, or like cross referencing a genre, like, oh, what if we did this even though this is a ballad, if we had this real tight small drum sound or something. That doesn't usually work, but you know what I mean, like just like it's just those thoughts in your head of what can I kind of go for, like you're saying. You're just like, oh, this is big and open and maybe it's going to be cool on this track. There's some sort of basic guidelines that I think I just do without thinking much about it. Like, you know, if it's a slow track, I can leave the kick a bit more open and long and low. And if the frequency of kick drums, and by that I mean how many there are in a bar, not the pitch, is higher, then probably need some stuffing and depends on what the bass player is doing. So all those things, again, they come into a place where it happens a lot quicker when you're working with people that you know and trust, or have sort of a target that you're kind of going for, even though you never achieve it or never really want to. You know, like a lot of times I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just go for that super, you know, dry, out on the weekend kind of drum thing. And I'm listening back and I'm like, yeah, there it is, got it. And then I'll put on out on the weekend. I'm like, holy, that is not what I have here. Even though in my head it's like, yeah, that's basically it. But I think that's what personalities behind the players gets you, you know.
I suppose it's working quickly in the situation too. You know, I can imagine, you know, you probably, I don't know, you grab whatever's available to you at the beginning of the day. You're all sat around rehearsing, or, you know, running through that first take. You're not going to hold up proceedings by adjusting. Yeah, but guys, I need to swap all the cymbals and the snare around because I'm not feeling it. You're just going to quickly adjust you're going to do what is necessary very fast in front of you to not stem the flow of creativity, but true. To get the sound close to you.
That's really true. I mean, that's like maybe the days of those budgets for most bands are kind of gone, and maybe that's a good thing. But I feel like, based on the time it takes to swap, like snares are pretty quick, so I don't mind doing that. And like do that, like even from the control room, I'll like say, hey, why don't we throw up the Superphonic, the 6.5 on this one, and we'll do it quickly, and it'll be okay. There we go. There's the beef that we needed. But usually you want to make the right kick decision ahead of time, and because it's kind of hard to swap out without like creating like losing momentum. And then, you know, somebody sees the kick getting swapped out, and pretty soon the bass player is going to get a coffee, and then somebody's on the phone, and it's like, okay, that was a 2-hour experiment and it was better before. So but yeah, you know, if you have a couple of cool flavors at your disposal, and then, you know, the infinite tweakability of each drum gives you a lot of quick flexibility, like you said, just a quick detune or throw an extra blanket in or take a blanket out, really changes the sonics of it. And like these decisions or non-decisions at the beginning of tracks are hugely influential on the outcome of the whole thing, because that's what everyone else is basing everything they do upon, because it's already laid down. So it's important, and you want to get it right, but you don't want to let your intellectual mind get in the way too much either. So it's a fine balance. And some days it's hard. It's like,
how do you balance it from you know, when you're dealing with an artist and say, trying to think of how to quite articulate the situation, but you know, say you got a really cool takedown, and maybe the snare sound isn't quite what you had in mind. Mm-hmm. It's working, but it's not perfect. Perfect in inverted commas, you know. But the take was really cool, and you know, how does that conversation go where the artist goes, I'm a bit unsure about that snare sound, and you're kind of thinking, yeah, me too, but the take's great, and it doesn't matter that much because it's working. You know, that must be a consideration occasionally. Yeah,
that definitely comes up, and then, you know, my producer engineer brain kicks in and says, okay, well, doesn't mean we have to erase that one. Let's set a timer, half an hour. And if we can dial this next sound and get an equally awesome take, and, you know, while I'm switching out snares or mics or compressors or whatever it is that we need to achieve the new snare sound, the drummer can be up here reviewing and listening to what the artist likes about. Hi there.
Sorry, we got a little visitor. Can you say hello?
Visitor. Oh,
she should be in bed. You gonna go to bed,
darling? I guess it's night over there.
Darling, I'm busy. Can you go and find Mummy?
Sorry, just give me one second.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no sweat. Oh, sweetie.
Come on, sweetheart. You can take those with you.
Oh, sorry about that.
No sweat.
She's two. She's called Etta, and she's at that stage now where she's tired, but she's wired, and just you put her in bed at 7:15, and then you hear thudum thudum thudum, and she's on her way downstairs.
She's up.
Am I not tired? And you're like, okay, all right, you can stay up, but you kind of don't want to send her to bed because she's so absorbent at that time. She just wants to sit and be interested in playing with stuff, and feel guilty sending her to bed when she's in that kind of learning mode.
Yeah, it's hard to shut that down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. I love everything that you're talking about, and I love there's quite a lot I want to get through. I mean, in relation to what we've just been speaking about, how does your hybrid setup work? I mean, I'm kind of thinking, technically, how are you moving from tape to the computer at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what a meanie. I am sorry that I cut it off there. It was about halfway through the conversation, and it seemed like a good point to stop on, and it was a little teaser for next week's episode. The way that he approaches his hybrid recording is fascinating, and it's unique to him only, it seems. And I'm going to probably try and attempt to do something similar at my studio. I need to pick his brains a little more about how he does it, and some of the more specific details. But yeah, that's a really, really interesting part of the conversation. Please forgive me also for leaving a little bit of the the interruption from my daughter. I kind of find those things interesting, and it makes me, I think it makes the conversation seem a little bit more real time, because I don't cut anything out of these conversations. And all of that kind of stuff just shows the flow of the conversation. So I kind of wanted to leave that in there for you. Okay, so that just leaves me to say, please leave a review for this podcast if you can. So whatever platform you're listening to, just scroll down and leave a little review for it. That helps with the sort of publicity and stuff, I guess. Also, you can find out more about me at my website, allyouneedisdrums.com. I'm also on Instagram at allyouneedisdrums and Facebook. So yes, a big thank you to Joe Kane for the intro and outro music, Adam Mallet for the artwork, and for Rory Hancock for doing all of the necessary work to get this podcast to you. Have a fantastic week, and I will speak to you next Tuesday. Goodbye!